What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin Jon.
Rin.
And we have an album review for you, and one that we're all kind of excited about because this band goes all the way back to our teenage years. We've been fans for a long time, and we were really looking forward to checking this one out. So we are going to go over the latest offering from Prong, State of Emergency. This comes out on the 6th of October on SPV/Steamhammer Records. This band formed in 1986 in New York City. This is their 13th album overall. God, it's kind of hard to describe this band because you get them in different eras. They've been part of the hardcore and crossover scene. They did industrial metal, groove metal, a little bit of alternative. I've been a fan of them since Cleansing. I picked up that album just because it had a fish eyeball and a fork, and that was enough for me.
Yummy.
And yeah, I just started really getting into their sound and noticing throughout their albums it kind of changed around a lot.
I got into Prong when I first started watching Headbangers Ball because at the time they were shoving the snap your finger, snap your neck video up everyone's heinies, which wasn't a bad thing. I've been a big fan of Tommy Victor's work since I was a wee lad, and he's been around since he was running sound at CBGB's in the 1980s with bands like Carnivore and Agnostic Front and all the punk and Biohazard, and it's where Tommy got his chops.
Yeah, actually, I think that's how Prong formed. He kind of met up with people in the area and went from there.
I got into Prong probably roughly around the same time Rin did. Actually, Rin probably showed me Prong, to be honest.
Showed him the Prong.
We grew up together, kind of, so I actually haven't heard any Prong since Rude Awakening, which was back in 96, so it's been quite some time for me.
Yeah, after Rude Awakening, which was, I believe, their last album on Epic Records, they were a major label band at one point, kind of entered kind of a nadir area. And then, around 2014, they had a really good comeback album with Carved into Stone. I became a huge fan of that. And then the subsequent albums I thought had been pretty good. Kind of a mix of hardcore and thrash metal and groove metal. They kind of settled in on that sound. And I've been kind of waiting for them to kind of get back to that sound that I initially really got into. And
the roots!
Yeah. And I think I got it on this one because going over this one, this has a lot of hallmarks of classic Prong, going all the way back to Force Fed and probably all the way through at least Cleansing on here.
I beg to differ.
I'll prove you wrong later. Oh, you were in for a rude awakening. Oh my God, someone stop us.
The first song, Descent, was one of the singles they released, and it's thrash a la Tommy Victor, just pounding drums, crunchy guitars, the bendies, the little pinch harmonics that Tommy Victor is known for. If you hear damn near any Prong song, there's his signature pinch harmonics. Different than Zakk Wylde's, different than, say, Rob Flynn's, but that signature.
Yep, a little squealy here and there. Kicks in the door.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Look out.
It demands a beer, too. Give it a beer. It's already sitting on your couch. It broke the locks.
Yep.
It's just energy right away. There's no pretense. There's barely any buildup. You get some, turnovers and chuggy riffs, and you're pretty much off to the races. Yep. And right away, the production, I just think sounds crisp and gnarly.
Yep.
The guitars have a good thrashy crunch to them. The drums are fucking pounding on here.
And it's a good even mix too. Nothing really overpowers anything. Thought the bass set a little thin at first, but as you get more into it, it's kind of rich and warm. It just kind of melts over the background of everything. But
clean.
Yeah.
And honestly, the first 5 tracks on here are some of their heaviest and most focused songs I think here lately. I've liked 0 Days and X No Absolutes. I thought they're solid albums. But I always felt like they were kind of chasing some more modern tropes. It, kind of just sounded they were trying to do thrash metal, but also trying to appeal to the more modern thrash crowd. This doesn't feel modern at all. No. This is a pure throwback, and a lot of this really latches on to their hardcore roots. There's a lot of groove on here, a lot of syncopated breakdowns, and the breakdowns in here are ferocious.
Hold my juice.
Yep, a lot of halftime breakdowns, dude. State of Emergency. That breakdown, that halftime breakdown in there is nasty.
Groove me, daddy.
And honestly, a lot of the breakdowns come in the choruses, which was something I really enjoyed because the choruses on here, at least these first 5 tracks, which are just gut punches, every single one of them, are, just punctuated by a giant chorus that is the pit spinner. Like, generally you kind of wait for like the hardcore breakdown later on, and granted you do get those later on, but the choruses on here just kind of drive it home. Like, you get Tommy's signature bellow in there. He's pretty much just belting out whatever the chorus, line is, or whatever the song title is. Doesn't matter. It's done with energy, ferocity, and it's just vicious.
Speed.
I can't say the first 5 songs because Non-Existent, I thought, seemed more accessible. Like, I didn't think that was as vicious.
Now, I mean, there is definitely some more accessible stuff. I will definitely get into that later, too. But Non-Existence at least still had, like, a really heavy breakdown. It was just this weird trade-off because, again, a lot of this feels like it's going through a lot of their, like, early career, like 80s through the 90s mostly. And Non-Existence was one of the ones that kind of reminded me of Rude Awakening.
Yep, it would have been a radio song in the 90s if the radio still had balls. If it had more jangly guitars and kind of less pissed off vocals, it would be some nameless jackass's biggest hit.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Man, there was a lot of that in the 90s.
Yes. Hello, I'm Nameless Jackass, and here's my band. Here's our song, Non-Existence. Yay! We're leaving. You got the song Light Turns Black, which is Biohazard, Brooklyn, New York. It sounds like when New York City was still a shithole. The slowdown before the end needed to be humped a lot more than
Yes, it did.
But it's a kick in the chops. It's kicking dicks in.
And Breaking Point, I think, is a really good standout, too, because it's kind of like that halfway mark between the hardcore groove and kind of that groove metal bite. Like, it's a little bit of that cleansing sound in there, too. Like, it's got this kind of fun, groovy swagger, too, but you get that hardcore syncopation, and once again, giant breakdown riffs that will just make you want to start a fucking fight with your entire city block.
And layered with the squealies. So good.
And little shreddy leads. They're teeny tiny leads, but they're all shreddy.
Yeah.
I mean, Tommy is an underrated guitar player.
He really is.
Like, a great riff writer, and, I mean, his lead play is generally, like, just fiercely shreddy, just as aggressive as his riffs. I mean, you can hear it on pretty much anything he's on, even outside of Prong.
And if you're not familiar with some of the other work he's done, he's been a touring guitarist for one Danzig and part of one Ministry. Yeah, check out some of that stuff. Maybe not the Danzig stuff. Senor Peligro.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yes.
But while this album is definitely more aggressive in a cool classic sense, there's also some really interesting, more melodic songs. And that's kind of common fare with Prong, like, with every album, at least, and they're more, like, I would say, like, Beg to Differ, all the way through, like, Rude Awakening, there were always some more melodic tracks. And, coming from a different era, like the 80s and 90s, metal bands did chase singles. They did try to get on the radio.
It's when MTV was worth a shit.
Yeah, and now MTV isn't, and neither really is the radio, so there's really no point.
What are you gonna do?
But that doesn't really stop them from actually kind of revisiting some of the more melodic tendencies that they've had in the past. Right around the track, Who Told Me, you kind of notice like a slight shift. Like, Who Told Me is still heavy. It still has its breakdowns, but you start hearing that kind of Whose Fist Is This Anyway, sort of like disco beat kind of pop in, albeit like done in a more hardcore sense. And this is where the album kind of like turns a little bit more toward the melodic side, but it's Prong melodic. Like,
it's oddly melodic.
Yeah.
You get a lot of weird dissonant chords that are like, I don't know, augmented sevenths or something. I took 2 years of theory 28 years ago, so I don't exactly remember.
That's weird. You're only 23.
I am 23.
That's weird.
I'm about to turn 24, though, so happy birthday.
Wow.
I don't know.
Goodness.
We'll see.
Our little boy's becoming a man.
I don't know. I've shaved my chest for all these years. Yeah, he uses a lot of odd chord choices, which makes the melodic songs not generic.
Yeah, because one thing I hate about most songs becoming melodic is that they sound like they've already been done before. They sound like you could pull them out of a fucking hat and put them out there and go, okay, play this song, and everybody's, yeah!
Mm-hmm.
Like,
this is about your lady, isn't it? Yes.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Bitch.
I see the breakup went well.
Yep, yeah.
I've been over it for weeks.
It was less than basic. Like, it had just a little bit more flair to it. Like,
Woo!
Like, even the melodies weren't typical. Like, a couple were even atonal at times.
Yeah.
In the song Compliant, like towards the end of the song, although it starts out melodic and kind of different, like towards the end, the melodies are all atonal.
Yeah.
Weird.
They're very, I don't know, kind of like dreamy, like, I wouldn't necessarily call it like shoegazy, but it kind of has that sort of like layered melody thing. And that's kind of a contrast from a lot of this album where everything is just kind of stripped down. Like, they sound like a three-piece because they are.
It actually reminded me, at least Compliant did, it sounded like newer Candiria. Even vocally, like the way he was delivering that and a little bit of reverb on him, like that bark, but it was kind of a yell.
And the song Disconnected, in particular, sounds very far removed from the hardcore and more metal side. Like, it's kind of just like a heavy rock song.
Right.
Like the post-hardcore bands like Helmet and Quicksand, like actually kind of really close to Quicksand. Tommy's vocals are a little bit more tuneful. The riffs are definitely less aggressive. It's more like melodic strumming. It's actually one of the most different songs on the album. Next to Absence, I don't know how to say that word.
Something.
Had a cool spacey intro, but then it cuts into like this chuggy like mixture between Hatebreed and early Meshuggah.
Disco Hatebreed.
Yeah, but mixed with like Meshuggah's Nun EP. And honestly, some of the strangest vocals just in terms of like the tone and even the cadence on it. Honestly, a lot of that kind of reminded me of Killing Joke, and I mean, this band has a connection with Killing Joke. Paul Raven was actually a member at one point, so it's kind of interesting. And in terms of them doing some more accessible songs, I guess we'll call it, they don't sound like they're trying to cash in on like modern fucking trends at all.
No.
Like, these are the bands that influenced them outside of metal, kind of coming through their music. So in a way, on an album full of like cool throwbacks to like 90s heavy music, this is kind of just another cool throwback, but just in a completely different chord.
The last original song on the album, Back NYC, is total CBGB's, Agnostic Front, Madball, dirty New York punk. It's biker jackets in the summer, wife beaters and docks. It's dirty New York. I smell the cigarettes in the rat pee.
Yes, to actually all of that. But yeah, that song kind of caps off in like a very traditional New York hardcore way. Like, there are very few like flat out metal elements about it. Like, there's a double
Punky.
bass flurry.
Yeah,
the rest of it is just punk aggression. It's nice fighting music, and that would have been a cool closer as is. But they decided to pepper in one last track, and kind of like an out of nowhere one. Yeah. We have a cover of Rush's "Working Man."
I was worried when I figured out it was the Rush cover.
I was too, because like how do you do that? Like, how do you cover Rush as a hardcore band?
Prong's no stranger to covers, but honestly, this was a pretty solid cover.
Pretty neat.
Like, I mean, he just lets the guitars really do the work. Vocally, like, I mean, he's not trying to hit those same squeaky highs that Geddy was going for.
Getty.
No. He keeps it in his register, and honestly, the best part of it is the bridge. Granted, they shortened it down. Like, this is definitely a shorter version of the song, but they thrash it up. Like, they add an extra bit of beef to it. It's a little bit snarlier. It's kind of got a little bit of that hardcore energy to it, and yeah.
Well, what's cool is because the verses are almost doomy. They slow it down, and then it picks up during the bridge lead part, and the squeal in the main riff he throws in there, and it's, oh yes, Tommy. Mwah.
I mean, for the most part, it's a very traditional cover, but that extra little bit of squealies that are thrown in there, that's like, Tommy just putting his signature on it, because that's the thing I look for in like every Prong album is those squealies. It's just a thing.
Yep. And then that big rock star ending, like, it was very well done and nothing I was expecting. It just, I was like, yeah.
Close it out. Thank you. Good night. Tip your fucking bartender. We're out.
And it sort of reminded me of Kirk Winstein's solo album when he covered Aqualung. It was kind of along that vibe.
Just out of nowhere, but honestly, like, overall, this album was awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was slightly reserved about this one just because I've liked, again, like, a lot of their work here recently. I thought it's been good. But this album, I think, is probably their most consistent one since Carved in a Stone. And that was the better part of a decade ago.
Jesus.
So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This is an absolutely killer album. This right here reminds me why I love Prong. All those flashes of like the older material kind of worked in with more crunchy, modern production. And man, the hardcore throwbacks on here. All you guys out there that love the, current surge of metallic hardcore that's out there, I'm right there with you, of course. This is definitely a band, I think, that kind of played into that maybe a little bit more subtly than others that were more just straightforward hardcore. But if you listen to this, you'll definitely hear all the tropes that are coming out in bands like Judiciary, Incendiary, Jesus Piece, stuff like that. Strongly recommend this. If you're a longtime Prong fan, get this. It'll remind you exactly why you've been a longtime Prong fan for years. 4 stars. Killer shit.
I'm going to give it 4 stars as well. Now, granted, I haven't listened to Prong in 27 years, which is crazy to think about on so many levels. I digress. Although it's been a long time, this was really fucking good. It was grooving, it was jamming, the breakdowns were awesome, it was thrashy, it was melodic, it was a little quieter at times, but like everything had its own unique little twist to it. And especially the Rush cover at the end. Well done. Yeah, overall, I just had a real good time with it. And like Nick said, if you're a longtime Prong fan, you're probably going to want to pick this up. And for all you people that are just maybe even starting to get into metallic hardcore, you need to do this, because bands like Judiciary and Incendiary and Jesus Piece and Teeth and all that shit that's out right now, this is definitely a good like microcosm of that. So I would recommend checking it out.
Don't call it a comeback. Tommy Victor's been here for years.
Ooh.
But I kind of want to call it a comeback, because outside of 4 or 5 songs on the last, say, 6 Prong albums, they were okay. This album is not okay. It's great. 4. I love it. The production, the songwriting. I like the oddly melodic songs. Tommy's not using weird voices or weird guitar tones. It's crunch, it's balls, it's kicking dicks. Hold my old man juice. I'm gonna bleed my own blood. Let's get it on. Prong!
Whose fist was that anyway? So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel somewhere, but thrallsmetal.com has all of our merch. We have new t-shirts. We have old t-shirts that are discounted. We have hats now. If you would like some Thralls merch, that is exactly where to get it.
Right now, we don't have any shows that we're promoting, but that means we have extra time to thank you. Thank you all so much for continuing to tune in and, talk to us and watch and comment and put in your 2 cents and, all the wonderful things that make Thralls of Metal wonderful.
Yeah, seriously, doing this stuff has been a fucking blast. And again, it's just fun reviewing all these albums and going over stuff like this. Especially, it kind of takes me back to my childhood, and that's kind of fun. Well, at least parts of it were. Yeah. Anyway, you guys rule, and we will catch you later.